Okay. Zok the Hela the Gemara. We are up to the two dots. That's about 10, 12 lines down on the top of Chav Gimel Amud Aleph. And the Mishnah describes how they built the torches. Kate Atayu, Masin Masuyos, Mavina Klunsois, and the Gemara explains, the Mishnah explains all the different things they did, what type of wood, what type of twigs, what type of shmatis. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Daled Mine Arozim Hain. There are four types of cedar wood. Eres castris, Eres of castris, Eitz shemen, Uberoish, Uberoish. So, Eres, castris, Eitz shemen, Uberoish. So now the Gemara is going to define what these things are. And this is all relative to Mekach Memker. If you say you're going to sell somebody Eres, and it's not one of these four minim, then you haven't delivered on your commitment. Kasrim, Amar of Adra, the Reb Shila. I'm sorry, Amar of Adra. Rav said it's called Adra. Again, I don't know what these things are. I'm not sure if the article indicates what they are. Even if they did, I don't know if we would know what they are. The Reb Shila Amri, Mavliga. It's a plant called Mavliga. There are those who say that it is Gulmish. They argue on Rabbi Barafuna. There are not just four types of errors. In fact, there's 10 types of errors. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, Etein b'midbar. I will give it a midbar. Erez, Shita, Bahadas, V'eit Shemen, Osim, Ba'arava, Rosh Tidar, Vesesher Yachtov. So the Gemara goes through what these things are. Erez is Arza, is our cedar that we know what it is. Shita is Turnisa. Again, Rashi says Pinaya Balaz. I don't know what that means. Hadas is Asa. We know what a Hadas is.
There's a pine.
And if Tunisa is pine, okay. I remember when we learned Tunisa, right? This pasuk last in Masechah Sukkah, Chaim Tzvi was kind enough to tell us that there are cedar bushes. There's a cedar plant and there's a cedar bushes. So the asa would be the cedar bush. Eitz shemen, a parsima. That's a parsima, which is something that we are familiar with. And it's balsam. Beroish is Barta. Busu Balaz, again, I don't know what this is. Te'idar Sha'aga, boxwood.
Yeah,
okay. Sha'aga is Shaf Balaz, again, I don't know what that is. Does he say what Shaf is?
Sorry, lost you here. Rosh Barasa is boxwood and Tidhar Shaga is a fir.
Fir, okay.
Fir.
Okay.
Tashir
is Sharivna.
Is not translated, but there's a note. It's not explained. No. It says the Rashbam to Baba Basra writes that the identity of the Shrivna was not explained to him. So I don't know what that does for us.
Okay. So for the Gemara, if you count up the items listed in the pasuk, you're going to find Hana Shiva Habu. There's only 7. There aren't 10. So the Asher Abdimi Amar Hasifu Alayim, they added to this list Aloinim, Al-Moigim, Aloinim, Al-Moinim, and Al-Moigim. Aloinim are Butmi. Rashi says only Belaz. Again, I don't know what that is. It's a type of tree. Al-Moinim is Beluti, Circava Belaz, Shagadelim by Peri Shakor and Gileanda. It grows Gileanda pears. Again, I don't know what these things are. I don't know. Does the article say what these are?
Al-Moinim was an elm tree. And Al-Mutin is oak.
Okay. Oh, okay. And Al-Moigim is finally something we do recognize. Almoigim is kasisa, and kasisa Rashi says min eita oila bakarka hayam ushmoi coral. So this is coral. Almoigim is coral. It's a type of cedar. It grows in the sea. And we know coral is quite valuable. The Gemara is going to talk about it. Ikadamri, it was Aroinim, Armoinim, and Almoigim. Aroinim are Ori, which Rashi says Luviri, Shema Ilan, best period current Baish. So I'm not sure what this is. Does anybody say what this is? Kustainus. I'm not sure what these things are. And then Armoinim are Dolvi, Kustania, and Almoigim is Kasisa, and Kasisa we know is coral. So Almoigim is something that's extremely valuable. It's called coral.
Dolby translates as chestnut.
As a chestnut tree?
Chestnut.
Okay, Kustana makes sense. Kustana, that sounds like a sticker like chestnut. Okay, beautiful. The pasuk says, as it's describing the river that's going to eventually come out of the base Kodesh HaKodeshim, it's going to start off as a tiny little stream, and it's going to grow bigger and bigger. So the pasuk discusses it. And it says, "Ki imsham adir Hashem lanu, v'kol naharim yaharim rach v'yadayim." It's going to be very big. Bal telech by ani shayid. Even big ships won't be able to cross this. V'tzi adir lo yavendu, and great ships will not be able to cross this raging river that is what's going to develop out of the little water that comes out of base Kodesh HaKodeshim. And Rashi says, "V'tzi adir lo yavendu lenachal." They won't be able to cross this river. She'ashed lotzais mibeis hamush. So it's Dr. Gemara. What is it? Tzi adir? Amarav du burni gedola. It's a huge ship. It's a safina shekarin Drummond. It's a type of ship. What is this ship? Exactly what is the ship? What do they use it for? Heichi abdu. Aisa burni gedola l'mayavido. What are these huge ships used for? It's almost like an oil drilling platform. What do they do? Maisu shis alfe gavri. They bring 6,000 people, and they work steadily for a period of treisa yachishata. So you have a massive workforce of 6,000 people working for 12 months. There are those who say it's treisa alpha gavri. They have more labor, less time. Treisa alpha gavri bishita yachishata. It still works out to the same man hours. With the ani lechala, and they fill the ship, this huge ship, with sand to sink it. Ad shachna v'nachas, until it sinks down to the ground. So we want the ship to be so low in the water that it's practically touching the sea floor, but it's a very tall ship, so it doesn't sink. The water doesn't go over the deck. They just want it to sit very low in the water. Rashi says, the bottom of the ship will rest on the seabed. But then in nearest don't think it's sunk. It still reaches above the water, above the surface of the water, so it's not sinking. Why did they do this? Why wouldn't it sink? Because the b'makom shal making the day where there's coral, b'yam and the b'yam ain't a yam. It's not super deep. So mamela, it's not like they're bringing it down 2,000 feet to the bottom of the ocean. We're talking about the ocean that maybe is 20 feet deep. So if the ship is a very tall ship, it's not a big deal. They could weigh it down so that the bottom of the ship hits the bottom. And now they have the ship resting at the bottom. What do they do with it? Bar Amaroi, what they do is they take scuba divers. Bar Amaroi Rashi is a malumad loshut benaris. They send scuba divers out around this ship that's way down on the riverbed. V'kater atuni de kisna v'kisisa. V'kater lehu b'sinta. What they do is they take chevle pishta. They take ropes of flax. Shem kashimli not like they're very strong. Flax rope is very, very, very strong. V'koisher rasha yechad v'shorish ilam. They would tie one end of these pishtan to the roots of the coral. V'rasha yechad beburni. And the other side of the rope they tie to the bottom of the ship. And then the notli chala v'shadul avroi. Now they start removing the sand from the ship so that the ship should start to rise. The Rashi Mishak Hanachavri Chalad Svinta. Then they take all the sand that they put into the ship to weigh it down. The Shad Lavra, they throw it out. So now the ship is going to start to rise. This causes the ship to rise in the water. And it's going to uproot the coral. So that's how they get rid of that's how they uproot the coral. They tie its roots to the ship. They lighten the ship up, and as the ship rises, it rips the coral right out of the ground. The Chamid Medallia, the morning, and as the ship starts to rise in the water, Akra, it rips out more of this coral. Umasya, they bring it, and it's so valuable. Umachlif al chad tren bekaspa. They could swap it out for twice its value in silver. So if they have a pound of coral, you pay for it with 2 pounds of silver. That's how valuable coral is. Morning. Talas Parvasa Havil. There's 3 ports. There are 3 major ports, I guess, in the area of Babel. Tarti Beirumoi. 2 of these ports were under the control of the Romans. The Chada de Parsoi. And one of these ports were by the Persians. The Veiremoi, the ports that the Romans had, Maskin Kasisa, they would use to bring in the coral that these coral farmers were able to harvest. So it was a very valuable port. The Veparsoi, but the ports of the Persians, Maskin Marganaisa. Rashi says it means Mikakoi Sayam, it's jewels from the bottom of the sea. I assume that means pearls. By sending down divers. Does the article say that Marganisa means pearls? I'm not sure what other jewels they get from the bottom of the ocean.
Yes.
Does that say pearls?
Mm-hmm.
Duvi should be the one to know. Duvi also found himself a pearl. Kavalti. Okay, Zakta Gemara weiter. Umekaria Parvasa the Mashmid. They're called the royal ports. Rashi says, they were called the royal ports because I guess they were very valuable ports. They brought in really expensive imports. So because of that, they were called the royal ports. Okay, that's the story of the ports of the Babel area. Today you could buy pieces of coral, but I think today it's illegal to harvest any type of coral. You have all the environmentalists are trying to protect the coral reefs. Okay, so let's see the more about it. We're at the bottom of Gimel Amar Aleph, about 8 lines at the bottom.
What was the point of all of this?
I guess to show the value of coral, and coral is a type of cedar. So the whole thing is to define what cedar is and the 10 different types of cedar, and one thing led to the next, I guess. So as one of the types of cedar, we define coral. And once we talked about coral, the Gemara wanted to discuss about how valuable it was, or it is, and how you harvest it. I'm sure that today there's got to be an easier way.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's almost like an oil platform. They weigh it down to anchor it in place, and then they use it to uproot the coral.
So the values in jewelry? That's the whole
What is
value?
the value? Why do people pay so much for it?
Yeah.
I guess it's for jewelry. I don't know what other practical value it has. No one's building a house out of it. We were learning the way they used to harvest coral. They would take a big ship. They would fill it up with mud so it would sink, but it wasn't in such deep water, so it didn't sink. It just hit the bottom. Then divers would go down and tie strong ropes to the bottom of the ship and to the coral, and then they would take the mud out of the ship. And as the ship rised, it ripped the coral out of the ground. That's how they harvested coral.
I know that the Indians, the way they used to dive for pearls, used to be able to dive for pearls for over 150 feet deep. Nobody knew how the Indians were able to dive so deep. I think it was 150 or 50, I don't remember exactly the number, but they were able to dive very, very deep. What they used to do is these Indians would go out with a canoe full of rocks. And then they would jump out of the canoe holding the big rock. And the rock itself would pull them down
quickly.
Very, very quickly, without any effort. And then they would take their pearls, their clams, whatever they were harvesting over there. That's how they would come up with that secret. Nobody knew for a while.
Here.
They left the rock in the bottom. Yeah, but they had the right oxygen. You mean the right oxygen?
This is pressure. No, it's pressure down there. It's pressure.
I don't know exactly how deep
Okay.
it was. That I'm not saying.
Okay.
It's deep enough that it was a big question.
Zok the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Yechon said, "Kol shita v'shita shenotlu nachem Yerushalayim." Every piece of wood, every morsel that the goyim raided from us in Yerushalayim, also Kadosh Baruch Hu lachzir and law. Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to make sure that Yerushalayim gets back everything that was looted from Yerushalayim. Shenamar, because it says in the pasuk, attained by Midbar. I'm going to put it in the Midbar, referring to Yerushalayim. Erez Shita. Vein Midbar El Yerushalayim. When the Torah says Midbar here, it's referring to Yerushalayim. Shenemar Tzion Midbar Haisa. See, Tzion became like a Midbar. See the pasuk? It says, Are Kachacha, Are you Midbar, Tzion Midbar Hayasa, Yerushalayim Shemama. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Kol Aloy Mitayra, Ve'enam Alamda. Anyone who learns Torah but doesn't teach that Torah to anybody else, Daimel Hadas Midbar. He's like a hadas, which is a beautiful smelling plant, but it's where nobody can enjoy it. It's in the midbar. So it's a shame that there's no benefit coming from it. Ikudamri, someone who learns Torah and teaches Torah in a place where there's no Talmid Chachamim, meaning b'makam sheinish, doimel hadas b'midbar. He's like a hadas in the midbar that someone does discover. The chavit, it's even more precious because there's not available this beautiful hadas, and this hadas is now available, so the hadas becomes much more valued. So to someone that's teaching Torah where there is no Torah being taught is a great benefit to the area. These goyim, they're going to have it very bad because one day when they pay us back, they're going to be paying us back with predatory interest rates. There is no way they have hope. Why? For every bit of nechoshes they stole from Yerushalayim, they're going to have to pay back in gold. And all the metal that they took, they'll have to pay back in silver. And for every wood they took, they have to pay back copper. And for every stone they took, they have to give us metal. But although these are all very expensive, and it's going to come at a big premium to the goyim, they can find resources. For destroying Torah, my mevian, how could they possibly pay up for that? On them it says, "Nikesi damam loy nikesi." So it's Rashi. Nikesi damam loy nikesi in Bosi l'nakos is a akum. Mishara vaynois. If I want to make them get a kapar for all their errors, it's possible. But loy enakei midamam shel Yisrael, I will never be able to have them pay back from what they did to kill Klal Yisrael.
The thing is that Rabbi Akiva, I don't know about his Chaverim, but Rabbi Akiva lived till he was 120 years. 120 years is the limit that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to everybody. So they may have be held accountable for the gruesome death that they did for him. But Rabbi Akiva lived till 120 years old. But the Baruch Hu said he's not going to let nobody go any longer anyway.
I hear. I don't know.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that he lived so long.
The Akiva, Yosy, and Hillel Zakin.
They all lived so long.
120.
Okay, gewaltig. Sagt der Heilige Gemara weiter. Where did they start and where did they finish? So we know they started on Har Mishka, which is Har Zaysim, and then the Mishnah lists the different Harim all the way in to both. So come on, my base Baltimore. One of the places was base Baltimore. Where's that? Omarav was Rav Zubiram. That's Biram. I don't know where this is. Does the article say where that is? What city that is in Eretz Yisrael? I don't know my geography well enough, especially based on the ancient names of the city. Duv is also looking.
At the point closest to Babylonia. I don't know where that is though.
I mean, it's moving towards the east
At the
from Eretz
extremity
Yisrael.
of Eretz Yisrael, at the point closest to Babel, I guess.
Okay, perfect. My Goyla, what is Goyla? At the end, it says they got all the way to the Goyla, and then the whole Goyla was lit up. So that's referring to Pumbedisa. My Kimaduris age, because the Mishnah says that the whole Babel was lit up like Maduris age. It says, Acha Yeroya Kol Goyla Lefanav Kimaduris age. What does that mean? Tana. Kol Echad Ve'echad. Not Lavuka Biyadi. Every individual, when they saw that Rosh Chodesh was being announced, they saw the light coming from Eretz Yisrael, everyone got excited. They all went up to their roofs, and they started shaking their torches up and down and right and left. So the entire neighborhood was lit up. It was like fireworks that they had whenever it was Rosh Chodesh.
I wonder why the city burned down every 5 years.
Tanya Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Af Chorim v'Chayer v'Geder v'Chaversel. In addition to the places listed in the Mishnah, this list of places of Rashi also So where were these additional places? Ikad Amri, there are those who say Beini Ubeni Havakaimi. They were interspersed in between the list of mountaintops that the Mishnah lists off. So it was along that same route from Eretz Yisrael headed east towards Babel. Ikadami Lach Gisa Eretz Yisrael Havakaimi, where the 5 cities that we just listed aren't going to the east towards Babel, rather they're going towards the west. I can't be due west because that would go into the Mediterranean, but I guess it would be going either southwest or northwest. Mar Choshev the High Gisa, the Mishnah is listing off the mountaintops going towards the east. Umar Choshev La Gisa, and the other brisa that we had from Shimon ben Elazar is soaking another. So let's see what Rashi says. I might have made a mistake because Rashi b'idich Gisa shalei Yisrael letzad Babel. Shnei tzad shalei Yisrael l'mshachim letzad Babel. There's two places. I guess you can head towards Babel towards the north, and you can head towards Babel towards the south. So I'm wrong. It's not to the east and to the west. It's both. Both of them are headed to the east, but I guess Babel was big enough of a country that you can have 2 routes headed to different regions in Babel itself. Between each of these mountaintops listed in the Mishnah is Shmoina Parsois. This is 8 Parsois. So let's just take a break for 1 second. How many mountaintops are listed in the Mishnah? It says as follows: Har Mishcha, Sartava, Grufina, Chavron, Beis Baltan. So there's 5 of them. So if there's 5 of them, and there's 8 parsois in between, so you have 4 gaps of 8 parsois in between the 5 destinations, the 5 mountaintops. So 8 times 4 is 32. So let's see what the Gemara says. Kama Havalut, Talosin V'Tartan, it works out a total of 32, because 8 times 4 is 32. If you drive from Eretz Yisrael to Babel and you clock your odometer, you're going to clock a lot more than 32 parsois. Rabaya, you're right, because Istatume Istatum. There's no straight route directly from Yerushalayim to Babel. And it's because Istatume Istatum Ludaki. The roads became messed up. And Rashi says, you cannot go in a straight line from Yerushalayim to Babel. The highways twist and turn to the right and to the left. So because of that, you're driving more mileage, even though if you drew a straight line, it would be less mileage. So let's look at the pasuk inside where the Torah is describing what's going to happen to the roads. I'm going to mess up your roads with obstacles. You're not going to be able to find your proper roads. So because of that, it's actually longer. You won't be able to find your roads. Okay, weiter. Godar darki begozis nesivoisai of. It says Godar. It says Godar darki begozis. The roads will be surrounded with rubble. The pathways are going to get messed up. So in other words, since the pathways were messed up and there wasn't straight lines, the roads ended up being much longer. Now I'm not sure what that has to do with the mountaintops. It sounds like the mountaintops were along the route to drive. I guess they didn't make people go onto mountaintops that were in the middle of the desert. I guess all of these mountaintops were milestones along the road to go from Yerushalayim to Babel.
The mountaintops were 8 parsecs as a birth line, but the roads to get there were much longer than they had to go around.
Because, so I'm sorry, you're right. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. You're right. So the mountains were 32 parsecs, but we say the reason why we say today it's longer is because the roads were not straight. That's right. I'm sorry, I got mixed up. Thank you.
How much is a parsec?
How much is a parsha in today's measurements? I'm not sure.
It's approximately 3 miles.
What did we say?
The Eretz is approximately 3 miles.
A parsha is approximately 3 miles.
4 mile. It says 4 mil, whatever that is. 8,000.
It says 3 miles.
No, 3 miles. Right.
32 gives us how many?
32 times 3.
140?
Yeah.
That's nothing. Iraq is much farther than.
That's right. I agree.
Where are you drawing the border of Eretz Yisrael? The border of Eretz Yisrael cannot be closer than it cannot. The Yarden, or even if we go all the way into Jordan, I mean, we're talking maybe over 1,000 miles.
Okay, so Chaim Tzvi is asking a very important kasha, and let's look at the second Tosfos.
Unless Babel itself was huge.
Let's look at the second Tosfos on the other. Zok Tosfos Kama Havil Klaus Nashad Tema Bisman Basically Chaim Nami Mechiketuva. They were much further away. Even in the time of the Beis Mikdash. Because the Mukhbar Kama Tani Shoyim Mahalach Tesvav Yoim Yerushalayim at Tzayfish Zokal Eretz Yisrael. It was a 15-day trip just to get from Yerushalayim to the border of Eretz Yisrael. We didn't want it to rain until the last person who left after Sukkot reached Nahar Paras. That was, of course, towards Babel, the Pras L'Tzad Babelu. In Lachalak, Ben Mikdash Rishon and Mikdash Sheni, K'damash Perkel Matziyas, which are Chloimar, you have to say, the Ritua Nafka L'Eretz Yisrael Mitad Echad at Pras Chutz Babel. You have to say that since we're talking about such a shorter distance, there must have been a strip of land from Babel that, even though the larger Babel was much further away, like you're suggesting, but there was a strip of land that belonged to Babel that extended and was much closer to Israel.
Also, and much closer than Nahar Paras as well.
Yes, of course. So there's a lot of geographical information here that are missing, because you're right. It is much further than 100 miles. Well, Babel had some territory. So it was close. They needed a launch pad for their rockets. So they had to extend their territory so that they could shoot rockets indiscriminately at Israeli citizens.
Guds.
It's guns, right. Zok the Mishnah. There was a big yard that was in Yerushalayim. It was called Beis Yazik. And there, all of the Edom gathered there. Rashi tells us they didn't gather there anytime they came. Someone who had to be Machal Shabbos to travel, to come to Yerushalayim, when they arrived, the welcome center was called Beis Yazik. And they all hung out over there. That's where Bezdin does the initial cross-questioning of the Edom. And they had a big kiddush there. They had a big kiddush that was going on all day long. Why was there a big kiddush? Bishvil show you Regil and Lovely. So people should want to come. Could you imagine if you have to travel a whole Shabbos, you have to walk and then arrive and there's nothing there? Here you arrive and there's like a shemaka kiddush with every type of herring and all different types of stations of cutting food. It's a chatina. People said, "What are you here? Oh, for the moon? No, what moon? I came for the kiddush." Right? Are you for the chassan side or from the kala side? You know, there's a very famous story with in Yerushalayim or in Bnei Brak when they make simchas, and it's because every schnur comes to get a free dinner. So a guy gets up once in the middle of the Hashana and he says, "Okay, we want to take a picture. Well, everybody from the Kala side, please go to the right side of the room, and everybody from the Chazan side, please go to the left side of the room." So half the crowd goes to the right side of the room, half the crowd goes to the left side of the room. And he says, "You can all leave. This is a bar mitzvah." So Dr. Gemara, Barishayna, Lo yahayu zozen misham kol hayom. Originally, they didn't move from that mutter all day. And Rashi says, why? These are all people who traveled out of the Tchum to arrive. When someone leaves the Tchum, he only has Dalar Amis. Now there's a shaila if you're inside a city, if you're allowed to be in the whole city, which Taisus raises. So it could be doesn't necessarily mean from the Chatzah, maybe to the city. So there's a discussion about that. That they should be able to go 2,000 amas in any direction as well. Not only these people, in other words, the people who came for Eidus HaChodesh, and of course Rabbi Gamliel did it because he didn't want people to be discouraged from coming. A woman who's coming to help someone give birth. Or if you're in the fire brigade and you came running to help save someone from fire, or from a gang of people who are going to rob a city, you came to save them, or if there's a river that's going to flood the city, what could you do? Rashi says it rises up and it floods the Shoydev. So you can go there. People came rushing to rescue those people who would be sakana, or if there's a collapse. They will be treated not like people who are out of their tchum. We'll treat them like their anshayer. This Mishnah is an extremely important Mishnah because it's from this very Mishnah where Moshe held that a Hatzalah member, Avadi, is allowed to be Machal Shabbos to go save somebody, but he's also allowed to drive back if necessary so that it should be available for next time. If Moshe brings the ride from this Mishnah, not all of the poskim agree with Moshe that they can be Machal Shabbos to come back, but if Moshe held from this Mishnah, it's quite clear that you could be Machal Shabbos even to go back because you see the svara of Hitiru Soifan Mishum Tchilas. Tosha says over here, the Mishnah lists off all of the things that Chazal allowed the Surim at the end so that people should come at the beginning. Is Mishum Dahach Lekashan on Midi, the Masnisani, the Kalhani Dasam, Parach Tanina Mashani. All of those were listed off. The Gemara asked on each one why they were a Chiddush. But this, there is no kasha. Why it's a Chiddush? Because it's a Mishnah.
Yosy, is it Tchum or Drabanan or Deraisa?
Tchum is there one, but Ke'en Deraisa. We treat it like a Deraisa.
I was wondering why Moshe makes that.
Yeah.
Moshe driving.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
Didn't agree with him.
Right. Not all the Israeli person didn't agree with it, but
The
Moshe.
Israeli person didn't agree with
I
him.
don't. I think the main person that didn't agree with the Israelis. I believe so. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Iboilu, Beis Yazik Tanan. Does it say Beis Yazik, which has a connotation of freedom, or Beis Yazik Tanan without the ayin, which has a connotation of being locked in? Beis Yazik Tanan is a lishnim al. That sounds like freedom. And Rashi says, he was surrounded with protection, with fortification. So does this Chatzah Yazik have a good connotation? Beis Yazik lishna the tzayra, a lashna being restrained. He was tied up. But Rashi lishna the tzayra al shem sasurin ki elu bazikin. They're tied down. Shein zazim misham kol yom. These people will be tied down because they're not allowed to leave this place. Amrabaya Tashma. Let's bring you a riot, in fact, that it means freedom. Because it says, they should begin love. So clearly, it was Geshmak. So question, You see, they were enjoying themselves. Maybe there was two sides to this coin. They were locked in, which is not so gishmak, but nevertheless, it was made as gishmak as possible because they were offering some fun refreshments during their visit. What was the process? What was the process of examining the Eidim? The first pair that comes, so it was first come, first served. They bring in the older of the two Eidim, and they question him individually. Now, we know there's a halacha that when ages are said, they both have to say their ages together. So how could they question them individually? So Mepharshim tell us that they are questioned individually first. Once they're both cleared, and we know that their stories jive, then they make the formal presentation to the Bezdin, which gives the psak. But first they have to clear them up, make sure they're okay. They tell them, Emar Ketzad Re'isas HaLavan. How did you see the Lavan? Was it Lefnei Achama or La'achar Achama? Was it in front of the sun or behind the sun? And Rashi will explain what these questions meant. L'tzafaina or l'deraima? Did it go, was it to the north of the sun or was it to the south of the sun? Kama haya gavoya. From your perspective, how tall, how high off the horizon did it look to be? Ula ayin haya noita. And in what direction was it pointing? V'chama haya rach. And how wide was it? So let's see Rashi, who explains what's the meaning of these questions. Zokt Rashi, Ketet Botnas Edom Lefnei Hachama. Zokt Rashi, Hachama Hoyleches LaOlam MiMizrach LeDorim. When the sun rises, it rises in the northeast. It moves down the eastern horizon towards the south. Umidorim Lamarav, as it's going across the horizon from east to west, it's in the south. I guess we're talking to people in the northern hemisphere, like where we live. Umimarav L'tzafay, and then when it hits the west horizon, then it starts to move north where it sets. Shenemar Hoylech El Doraim V'Soiviv El Tzafay. The Halavana ain't nearest beyond Shloshim La'olam. On day 30, you'll never see the moon. Ela Samach L'Shkiyas Hachama. You'll only see it when it's starting to get dark. Shemitoich Shidaka Uketana. Since at that point it's a very small moon, ain't the nearest. It's not visible when the sun is still strong. Now, Zot Rashi, the Mishnah only offers l'tzafain or l'dorim of the Chama. The Mishnah doesn't mention that we asked the aid, was it to the east or the west of the Chama. Zot Rashi, midaloi katani l'mizracha or l'mayrava, shmami no, ain't nearest l'hem b'dorim. It must be that you would never see the moon and the southern horizon during the day as the sun is crossing from east to west along the south horizon. Because if the moon was visible then to anybody, they would also ask that question. Did you see the moon to the east or to the west of the sun? But it doesn't say that. Meaning, we assume that the moon would only be visible towards the end of the day where the sun was already on the western horizon at the south and moving towards the north, and therefore we're asking, would the moon be visible on the south or the north? So let me just ask you a simple question. If the sun's path on the western horizon is headed from south to north, where would the moon have to be? Would it have to be to the north or to the south of the sun? So I throw that question out. Let's see Rashi weiter. So you shoyl Sa'edim. The Gemara at this point thinks that the question that they asked the Edom was Imra'ua Ma'aleches Lefnei Achama Oil Acharel. Did they see the moon traveling in front of the sun or traveling behind the sun? Did you see the moon to the north of the sun? So it was ahead of the sun? Or was it to the south of the sun? The Gemara Parach, if you're asking if it was Lefnei Achama or La'achar Achama, and the sun is moving from south to north, so by definition Lefnei Achama means to the north. So why do you have to ask the same question again? We couldn't ask if it was L'tzafan or L'dorim. The only time it's appropriate to ask if the moon is to the north or to the south, that's only when everything is along the western horizon. if we're talking about the sun and the moon being on the southern horizon, then the moon couldn't be to the north or the south of the sun. It would be it would be to the east or the west of the sun. But as Rashi said earlier, the moon is not visible at all during that period of time, so it wasn't relevant. But when the sun and the moon are both along the western horizon, moving to the north, in front of the moon, in front of the sun would mean it's to the north of the sun, because they're headed north. And if it's behind the sun, then then I raise it then you know it's to the south. So that was one of the questions they asked. They want to know how high it looked, based on your assessment, how high off the ground did it look to be? And then they asked them as well, in which direction did it point? So Rashi explains, so this is really what I meant to ask you earlier. The moon, when you see it, is not round at the beginning of the month. It looks like a banana. So is the round part of the banana facing the sun, or was the concave part of the moon facing the sun? So there's an obvious answer to that. The concave section of the moon cannot be facing the sun, because the reason why you see the little banana is because that's the part where the sun reflects on the moon. So you could only see the round part of the moon facing the sun. It would be impossible to have it any other way. So if they answered that question wrong, it was pretty obvious that they didn't see the moon. Okay. Zok to Gemara weiter.
Bought a model. Tuesday we're gonna have a model. Okay?
What?
I bought a model.
What's a mall?
A model.
A model. Oh.
Okay, so Tuesday we'll have the model.
Oh, because Tuesday night, Daniel Finkel's giving a share on this.
Okay, so I'll give him the model.
Okay.
I made a model.
If he said that it was in front of the moon, in front of the sun, then you know it can't be the truth. And the Gemara will explain why. Then they brought the second fellow into the room to cross question, and they were by the kim. If their testimony corresponds, then they do some kayemes, then their testimony is kayem. And once they've already established that they have a set of edim with which they can be mekadosh to chaydish, then there's no reason any longer to cross question the rest of them. But you don't just dismiss them, because then they feel like they came for nothing. So therefore, they just ask basic questions to make them feel like they're needed. Not because they needed them, they've already have proven testimony. We don't want them to go feeling let down that they came for nothing. So we make them feel like they were very important, not like they make you feel when you go to jury duty, where they just have you wait and then send you home and dismiss you something which you're happy about. But here they wanted every person to feel special and needed, so that they should come again if they have a vision of the moon.
Pretty elementary. Like, if you pay attention, it feels like this every month. So how is it able? If you could,
It seems like people weren't as knowledgeable about these things in those days. So for them it was hit and miss.
maybe more moon every month.
That's a good point. I don't know.
There wasn't so much lights around.
So they saw it even better than we see it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they went to sleep when it got dark in those days. I don't know. It's a good question. It's a good question. Isn't Lefnei Achama the same thing as Letzvaina? Because the sun is headed north. So why the double line of questioning? Amar Abaye, the question was Pegimasa Lefnei Achama, was the concave part of the moon facing the sun? If he said that the concave part of the moon is facing the sun, you know that cannot be the case, because it's simply impossible. So Rashi says, and that's what the Mishnah continues in the Seifa and says, it's impossible that the sun should face the concave part of the Levana, because by definition, the part of the Levana you see is what's reflected on the sun, which will be the round part. Rabbi Yochanan said, "My dechsiv hamshel b'fachad imoy oishes shalom b'mraimov." You learn from there Hashem makes peace amongst the celestial beings. The sun never looked at, never saw the concave part of the moon, the part that's missing. The sun will never be behind the rainbow. Why? It makes the moon feel bad because the moon got minimized because of the sun, and now the sun gets to stare at its deficiency. It's too painful for the moon, so Hashem makes that it should never happen. The science says it's impossible, right? Because the part of the moon that will be visible is because it's reflected from the sun. It's always the round part. And we don't want people who will orbit of a desire and they treat the sun as a god. We don't want them to ever say that Giri Kamashadya, that the sun is shooting arrows at us. If the sun would be behind the rainbow, on the concave part of the rainbow, it looks like the sun is operating a bow to shoot arrows at us. By making it the sun could only be on the receiving side of the bow, people even who are Avodah will not say that. Let's see Rashi. Giri Kamashadya, Hachama, Hazois, Chitzim Hiyoyre, Lilachem Bekoifimba. The sun is actually such a powerful God, it's shooting arrows at those who don't serve the sun like us. When you're shooting a bow and arrow, the concave part of the bow is facing you. So therefore Hashem makes it that it should never be that way. But Avada, we know scientifically it's impossible. The Gemara is just explaining B'derech Drush why it's like that.
No, but if the sun would go on the other side of the moon,
Right.
where it never goes, then it would light up that side. That's what the Gemara is saying, that the sun would never be on that side. Of course, if it goes on that side would be the lit side, but it still never goes there.
Why?
Dr. Borton says nothing to it. Never go there. There will never be an orbit that way.
I don't know.
You're saying logically, meaning it's impossible even if that would happen, because if that side would be the lit side,
And that would be round.
then that would be the round.
Title lock.
Right, but the sun
It's
doesn't.
also, different portions